Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolás Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer. All perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, it's Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors, operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement, caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a ready, what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far, with capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So We don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solis, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship they'll be heading to, ultimately, New York. And then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over, in particular, the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide, and he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago, a little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going, they're walking their daughters, they're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. It's been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana. And we have done that. And it was a rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing. And we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster, and the mayor was a disaster. But it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there when they need us. We'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people, and now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst, they say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungari from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungari, what happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. It was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States, but no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines, and the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Donroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist Maduro is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation this morning. It's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Cain. He's a fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, can you explain how the U.S. will run Venezuela?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the President said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation, a massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Cain, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve, the most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolás Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around, and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026. And under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our chairman, Chairman Raisin Cain, to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolás and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets. In early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel so, as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49. And there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the President said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolás Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward which I guess we saved $50 million. And
Make sure.
yeah, exactly. But
Don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolás Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States, and the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy. But instead, he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think that the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody. But don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that, I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that a message for Cuba? Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Mr. President. You said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. So who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
Mr. President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, they always say boots on the ground. So we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. They stole our oil. We built that whole industry there, and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you explain the exact mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
Yes, it's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
What's the group you mentioned that would run Venezuela?
Well, it's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead, I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. and it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others. We have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be.
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship
Well,
going?
I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He's just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, you said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is about that.
Well, he has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And, yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Mr. President, did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
Sure. We call members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Plus, if I could add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, We had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. We went through. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
Mr. President, you were one of the only people to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. The safe place is all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. People were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it. Go ahead, finish.
Where is Maduro going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact whereabouts?
Well, eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards. Did that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
President, how long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want the Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. We're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. it's actually very dangerous. It's blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country. Yeah.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to the oil and the drugs?
And Russia, Russia when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to give it to them. In other words, we'll be selling oil probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Are you saying, Mr. President, are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that?
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
That you're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. You know, if you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country. And they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was. In terms, I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military troops to provide?
They're going to be a team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro. And right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay and some probably want to go back. Yeah.
Done to protect Americans in the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're very protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it. Yes, sir. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, is there a message here for Cuba and Diaz-Canel?
Well, Cuba is an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you a statement a few minutes ago about, when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, they were, all of the guards that helped protect Maduro, this is well known, their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems the Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba. They tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit.
Cutting off the oil flow to Cuba from Venezuela?
Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's an pre-existing.
Mr. President.
The answer is yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Aware of the location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President,
Do you have any hesitations about Machado?
Mr. President, on Monday.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect to be the leader.
Mr. President, is it possible that the U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years?
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial, so it's not going to cost us anything. We want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what was happening, and you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding, and we're not spending money. The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries, and we also have to have energy. Very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Mr. President,
U.S. military.
Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the U.S.
Well, I don't want to get into the
Venezuela?
conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
Mr. President, you said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras who was convicted of many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are different? And would you ever pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly. And there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that country?
Well, no, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless
President.
it's a bad question, in
It's
which
about
case I'll
Putin.
go one word. It's about who?
It's about Putin, if you want.
About Putin. Well, that's
Okay.
always nice
You had
to
a
talk
phone.
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him
Yeah.
on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
Was that
I
intelligence?
thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace. So I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not. And they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions. We send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings that come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But if I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities throughout, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin. I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this. I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general, and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath, and we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much.
Now, President Trump saying he's not thrilled with Vladimir Putin. An incredible end to just an incredible press conference. We're bringing back now Colonel Darren Gobb. He's a geopolitical analyst, former battalion commander and Black Hawk helicopter pilot. Claire M. Lopez, former CIA officer and national security analyst, and our own NTD News Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, who's been covering the U.S.-Venezuela conflict extensively. I have notes coming from all over my table here. Luis, let's go to you first. It looks like the U.S. will be working with Venezuela VP Delcy Rodriguez to run the country, at least temporarily. What do we know about her?
Well, one of the things that we know about her is that as of recent months, there were reports that she had offered a plan to the Trump administration of leading a transitional government if Maduro was ousted. So I think we got a lot of answers during the Trump press conference. He did say that no one is going to get the $50 million bounty reward for Maduro, but that Delcy Rodriguez has already been in contact with the Trump administration. So that would at least signal some cooperation from Delcy Rodriguez. And I would assume also that that means that she has negotiated some sort of immunity from being prosecuted for crimes against the Venezuelan people and also through narco-terrorist charges. Now, it's also interesting, Paul, to note that from the Trump administration press conference, we also know that Nicolás Maduro was hiding in Fuerte Tiuna, the military fort in Caracas. Now, again, this is just commentary, but I would find it hard to believe that the U.S. military was able to go into the most fortified location in the entire country without some sort of cooperation from local military forces. We also know that the Venezuelan armed forces have over 5,000 Igla-S. These are Russian handheld anti-aircraft missiles. None of them appear to have been fired. So I would stick with the assumption that there was some cooperation from the Venezuelan regime's inner circle to hand over Maduro, right, and Delcy Rodriguez being sworn in and being in peaceful conversations with the Trump administration would suggest that.
Absolutely, Luis. Thank you. Claire Lopez, your reaction to the U.S. Running Venezuela, at least in the short term.
Well, I think that one of the major concerns, of course, when the leadership of a regime like Nicolás Maduro's is removed, one of the major concerns must be what comes after, and ensuring that everything doesn't collapse into chaos. So I think that there was probably a very long period of preparation ahead of this. This didn't happen overnight last night, but that the after part, what would follow the removal of the Maduro regime, was laid out very carefully ahead of time. As Luis says, certainly with Delcy Rodriguez now sworn in as the new president, but likely at other levels throughout the Venezuelan leadership, but in particular and especially, I think, of course, within the military. This was prepared long in advance so that in the aftermath, meaning today and looking forward, everything would not collapse into complete chaos. They have people on the ground. We have people on the ground that are already selected and prepared to at least administer the country in the interim period for now.
Colonel Gobb, the president said the United States was able to turn the lights off in Caracas. He also said there was no equipment lost in the operation. What else stood out to you listening to General Kane and Pete Hegseth during the press conference?
Yeah, Paul, I guess I would focus at this point on what General Kane said. In my area of specialty, I've flown hundreds of missions that are similar to this, maybe not at the same scale, but the number of bases involved, number of aircraft involved, the amount of rehearsals that would have to take place, airspace is at a premium, the capabilities from space down to boots on ground. Can't get into all of that, of course, but having the lights out and many other things are what made it possible for the anti-aircraft systems to have negligible to no effect on what happened. You have to account for it and remove them. I agree with Luis that you definitely had a local flavor to this, where there were some people saying, hey, this is a good time for us to stand down and let them execute the mission, because that's what we need to do to be successful as a country, and probably to some extent self-preservation. But for this to occur the way it occurred, with the complex movements, not only in the military space, but the ongoing diplomacy, all of it, as Claire said, takes months of work. It is an extremely difficult thing to do. Only we could do this. And I'm extraordinarily proud of not just the military, but everything at every level that occurred that made this a safely executed mission. And we'll see how it goes from here. I'm a big fan of what happens next as well. The military is not necessarily designed to rebuild nations. We can have a function, but others are probably best to do that. What we're good at, we need to be excellent at, and the world just saw it.
Incredible. Colonel Darren Gobb, Claire Lopez, we appreciate you both for your analysis this morning. Luis Eduardo Martinez, we will see you soon. We'll move on. Thank you all. And NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu is at the North Lawn of the White House. Mari, what did you take away from the press conference?
Hey, Paul. Yeah, so President Trump, in that historic press conference, briefing the public on what they're now calling Operation Absolute Resolve. And we have more details about just the amount of planning and meticulous intelligence that it took to pull it off. General Raisin Kane saying that the operation began months ago with intelligence officials tracking Maduro's movements. President Trump saying that the U.S. caused a blackout in Caracas, as you mentioned, for the operation, saying it was dark. The lights were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that the U.S. has. And Maduro and his wife are now on a ship heading to New York. Then President Trump says a decision will be made between New York and Florida for them. Trump touting that not a single American service member was killed and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. Also saying that he was prepared to do a second wave of attacks on Venezuela, but that he thinks it won't be necessary now because the first attack was so successful. The president also saying that the U.S. is going to be working with Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez to run Venezuela until a transition of power. Take a look.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela.
President Trump also says that the U.S. is going to send its oil companies into Venezuela to help fix their infrastructure there to start making money for the country. And he also says that Venezuela's socialist regime stole U.S. assets through force and that the U.S. built their whole industry there. Take a look.
We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did.
And the official indictment released by Attorney General Pam Bondi really echoes what President Trump continued to tout about his peace through strength strategy and his national security strategy, putting America first. Maduro's been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, with the Attorney General saying that he and his wife will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. Paul, back to you.
Mario, it's at the White House. Mari, important press conference. Appreciate you there, keeping an eye on it for you. Now, as you heard from Mari, the United States will run Venezuela, according to President Trump, until a proper transition team is formed. It looks like they will work with the current Venezuelan Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, to do that. The president saying that Rodriguez has basically said, we're willing to do whatever you need us to do. The president saying at this point, well, she has no choice but to do that. Now, we heard about the mission itself. General Raisin Kane, he said the mission was carried out by special ops, soldiers, sailors, Marines, and Guardians. He said it took months of planning and decades of experience. CIA, NSA also involved in that mission. And he said it was not only an audacious operation, but the level and the scale and the effectiveness of their integration was something that only the United States would be able to do. And what's interesting to note is he said the weather broke just enough for the mission to be completed. And he said that only the United States would be able to complete the mission in those types of situations. He said it began at about 1:01 a.m. Eastern time, and by 3:29 Eastern time, Nicolás Maduro and his wife were over the water and heading back for the United States. what was interesting was he said Maduro, as the U.S. forces arrived and they made, just put it, through a fortress in Venezuela. They made it to Maduro and his wife where they were. Maduro made for the safe space, made it there, but was unable to close the door in time and was apprehended. As General Kane said, the two indicted persons, Nicolás Maduro and his wife, who was indicted in 2020, were apprehended and put onto the plane. Now, about rebuilding, you could say, or running Venezuela, the oil industry. President Trump said that America, the United States and American oil companies were responsible for building up Venezuelans' very lucrative oil industry. And then the Venezuelan regime, in President Trump's words, stole those assets and that infrastructure from the United States. The president said it was the worst piece of theft in American history. And the president said that the socialist regime were able to just take it from the U.S. President Trump saying he would not have allowed it. And now U.S. oil companies will come back into Venezuela and pay for the rebuilding and the redevelopment of the oil industry, which the president said has been neglected over the years. When asked, what about the countries that are buying oil from Venezuela at the moment, President Trump said, well, we're in the oil business. We'll likely sell them the oil. So the president said it was the most spectacular assault since World War II, compared it to the attack at Soleimani, al-Baghdadi, and he said again that no other nation in the world would have been able to carry out an attack like this. Interesting about the attack itself, the president said he didn't go into the details, but he did say that they were able to turn off the lights in Caracas while the operation was underway. He said that it looks like they were expecting it. Venezuela, at least the president wasn't sure, but he said in some way it looked like they were expecting it. And he said that the one U.S. aircraft did take damage, or did take a hit, but was able to be flown back to the United States. He also said that forces in Venezuela seemed to be in position, but were incapacitated very quickly. Asked about his message to the Venezuelan people, the president said that he wants peace for the Venezuelan people. He wants to give them their country back. He wants to give them justice and safety, and that this new transitional team will work to do that for the people of Venezuela. We have the president talking about the Monroe Doctrine, which basically emphasizes U.S. control and influence and security of the Western Hemisphere. President Trump joking that people are now calling it the Donroe Doctrine, obviously a play on his name, Donald Trump. So just an incredible press conference and incredible developments this morning between the United States and Venezuela. The president also, both the president and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, somewhat sending a message to other nations in the area as well. Trump saying that Cuba is not doing so well. He also wants to help the people living there, and not just the people Venezuelans living in Venezuela, Cubans living in Cuba, but also those people of those nations who are living here in the United States. Interestingly, the president saying about the new transition team in Venezuela. The current Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, seems to be working with the United States, working with Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth to implement that transition. Of course, Maria Machado, from Venezuela, Venezuelan opposition leader, recently won the Nobel Peace Prize. Many may have thought that she could have been part of the transition team, but the president saying that Machado does not have the respect inside Venezuela to actually execute a mission like that. We're going to bring in now our very own NTD Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez. Luis, are you with us?
I'm here, Paul.
Luis, thank you so much. Luis, I'd like to get your high-level reaction to everything we heard today.
Well, responding directly to the comments of Maria Corina Machado, I think that was very interesting and very telling. And of course, this is all high-level negotiations that have been happening for months behind closed doors, behind, obviously, the public eye. And it would suggest that Maria Corina Machado's team and entourage did not reach a consensus with the Trump administration on the best steps to follow after the removal of Nicolás Maduro from power. He was President Trump, very dismissive of her position and role in this entire process, which I think was very interesting to see. I think it's also important to explain to the American audience and not to be carried away by the headlines that are already popping up in a lot of legacy media outlets of Trump saying that they're going to run Venezuela. This is a very delicate time, this transition. So this is a regime that has been in power for over 26 years. They've consolidated complete control of the armed forces, of the National Guard, of the national police in the entire country, have armed collectives in popular neighborhoods all over the country that are at the command of this regime structure. So, of course, the transition needs to happen in a way to allow for security and peace in Venezuela and not chaos, anarchy, and violence. So having the U.S. military presence, like over 30% of the Navy in the region, and having the president immediately say from day one that they're going to be there very closely looking at how everything is developing and that they're ready for a second strike is sending the right signals to the regime remnants to stay in line and allow for a proper democratic transition. So I would assume, and we will of course see how this plays out, that Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president who was reportedly just sworn in as president and who is in communication with the Trump administration, will allow for this orderly transition. We will see if elections are called in the near future or they will allow for the term of this illegitimate presidency of Maduro to run out and run its course. And also for the Venezuelan people, the right message has been heard that money, investment, U.S. presidents, U.S. companies are coming into the country to invest. That's what the Venezuelan people also want to hear, because the removal of Maduro from power doesn't solve the problem of the Venezuelan population that has been literally starved over the past decades due to incredible hyperinflation and the destruction of national industry. So it will definitely be interesting to see how Delcy Rodriguez handles the positions of the Minister of Interior, Diosdado Cabello, and the Minister of Defense, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, whether or not they will remain in power or be handed over to U.S. authorities. They've been indicted in U.S. courts and have $25 million bounties each on their heads.
Fascinating. Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD's Washington correspondent. Luis, thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Now, on what Luis was saying, transitional government coming into play for Venezuela until something permanent is in place. The president saying today that the United States will be working with the current vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, to make sure things are stable in Venezuela, things get done. The president saying that Delcy Rodriguez has said to them, we're willing to do whatever you want us to do. And again, the president saying that they don't really have any choice at the moment. The president in the press conference appearing quite confident that the United States will be able to keep Venezuela stable during this transitional period. We heard Luis Eduardo Martinez saying that this is a sensitive time for Venezuela and for the Venezuelan people and for the United States to be able to do that. And also as Luis said, bring investment back into the nation. Again, the president saying that the United States oil companies will be paying for the redevelopment and the improvement of Venezuela's oil infrastructure. And then even countries like China and Russia will be welcome to buy that oil from Venezuela. Again, the president saying we're in the oil business. And so we're open to selling the oil to those people. The president as well highlighting, and not just the president, but also Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, highlighting Maduro's role in the flow of drugs and crime from South America into the United States. Marco Rubio is saying this really is a warning for people, for other world leaders who are doing this, as Marco Rubio put it, to not play games. Rubio is saying that, highlighting that, calling the president a president of peace, saying that they gave many generous offers to Nicolás Maduro to step aside and to go and live somewhere else. And in Marco Rubio's words, he said, but instead Maduro wanted to play big boy and wasn't willing to step down. And Marco Rubio is saying that today's operation was really a message to other world leaders about President Trump that if you didn't know, now you know. And joining us now is retired U.S. Marine Colonel Grant Newsham. He's also a former U.S. diplomat and senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. We're also joined by Rob Maness, a retired U.S. Air Force colonel and former Wing Squadron commander. Gentlemen, great to have both of you here. Grant Newsham, your high-level reaction to what we just saw.
Well, it was a very successful operation, incredibly difficult. And I think as we learn more about it, we'll be even more impressed about how it happened. I think it was timely. I think Maduro is illegitimate, needed to go. But the big question I've got now is what happens? I suppose his cronies and their secret police stay in power, hunker down. I hope somebody has thought through about how they're going to return Venezuela to a really consensual government that it used to have.
Colonel Maness, listening to General Raisin Kane give details about the mission, what stood out to you?
Well, it's a highly complex operation, Paul, and I appreciate you having me on. Over 150 aircraft from what General Kane briefed us all on. Only one aircraft took enemy fire and was damaged, but not damaged enough to where it couldn't fly back to its launch location. And that's a tremendous effort. It says something about the impressiveness of today's U.S. Armed Forces to get this done. Look, I flew in the lead wave of an operation called Just Cause to take down Noriega 37 years ago. And the way this operation was conducted was obviously incorporated all the lessons learned that resulted in 23 Americans, soldiers and sailors dying in that operation. And today we have some injuries, but no fatalities. We got the mission completed to extract Maduro and his wife, who have been indicted in New York, all well within both international law, I might add, and the Constitution of the United States. And I'm with Colonel Newsham. You know, the big question is, what's next?
It's incredible. President Trump just describing the operation in Caracas, saying that it happened under the cover of darkness. In just a short period of time, all Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of the U.S. military working with us, law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro of the dead of night. We have a soundbite. We'll play it. Maybe we'll come back to it. Colonel Newsham, the president said they were able to knock out the lights in Caracas. Not a single piece of U.S. equipment or U.S. life was lost. It just sounds epic, almost.
Well, it really does. And I think that anybody who's bought Russian air defense systems is probably wondering if they paid for the right sort of products. The Iranians learned the same thing a couple of months ago as well. I'm not being glib about it, but it does give you some idea that despite, say, how the Chinese adversaries have gotten more powerful in recent years, the U.S. military still is incredibly professional. It has an awful lot of punch. So this was a very well-planned, mission, and a lot of things could have gone wrong. The situation in Venezuela, as I noted, and this is the big thing, taking out Maduro was hard enough, but the entire sort of repressive infrastructure, the secret police in Venezuela has been run by the Cubans for an awfully long time and is responsible for something like 19,000 extrajudicial killings, that's murders. And getting this regime, getting this structure out of place is going to be the hard part. And we'll see how this goes. And I do hope somebody has thought through this, has planned for it. I'm assuming that the CIA with its and the intelligence community with their $100 billion a year budget has got this worked out. At least I hope they do.
Well, let's see. We have this clip. We're going to play it.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela.
Colonel, your reaction to the United States running Venezuela, at least in the short term?
Well, it gets to the question, Paul, of what is next. And, fortunately, the president later in that clip said that the current acting president of Venezuela, she has agreed to do whatever the United States needs her to do. And we also have opposition leaders like the president-elect Gonzalez and Ms. Machado, the opposition leader that was denied to run for election when Gonzalez got elected last year. And Maduro stayed in office anyway, that are ready and prepared to go back and reestablish legitimate government in there. But again, like Grant has said a couple of times now, the real question is the layer upon layer of the secret police, resistance bureaucrats, those kinds of bureaucratic levers have to be addressed in order for this to be successful. Because you have to have more than just people coming out and dancing in the streets and a top layer or two of opposition leaders that are ready to take over the government in order to actually govern the country so that we can do things like have the oil companies from the United States that had their companies and their oil stolen from them come back in and rebuild Venezuela's infrastructure. And those types of things, and reestablish Venezuela as a prosperous country, the most prosperous one in that part of the world, like it used to be. But in order to do that, you have to address this issue with the secret police and other bureaucrats that are going to be resisting.
The economics of this is just going to be fascinating. Like you brought up the oil industry. Colonel Newsham, we heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio warning American adversaries to not play games, saying if you didn't know, now you know. He was talking about the president's decision to execute this mission. When you look at Venezuela's alliances and Maduro's alliances, Iran, Russia, China, what message is this sending to them?
Well, it's that America is not going to sit idly by while under its nose. You have its enemies, the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, the Cubans, using Venezuela as a host, as a platform to actually attack America with drugs, sending gangs up here, and also with the Chinese and the Russians putting in military capabilities. One can easily imagine what the results would be of a dozen sort of missiles hitting the Houston oil industry. It would shut us down immediately. You just can't let this happen. It looked for many years like America was just a lot of talk, but was ultimately helpless. And now it looks a lot less so. And all of our adversaries must be wondering about this now. But one of the real advantages here is that Maduro is an illegitimate president, and his regime is illegitimate and has been for a long time, even going back to the Chavez era. And there's an alternative that is wildly popular that is ready to take over. And it won the last election. The cheating was just astonishing. And even outfits and countries that normally will tolerate any sort of left-wing misbehavior, even they said that this is wrong. And so we have a good alternative, but let's see how the political part of this gets played out. It is nice to see our adversaries on the back foot for a bit, particularly the Cubans. Once they stop getting that cheap Venezuelan oil or free Venezuelan oil and the money that comes from drug trafficking, they're going to be an even bigger mess than they already are.
Colonel Manus, does it feel like long ago we had Operation Midnight Hammer when the United States took out the nuclear facilities in Iran? That was after the Trump administration gave many warnings to the Iranian regime. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was saying this time they gave many warnings and chances to Maduro to step aside. Again, the same question to you. What is the message of today to adversaries and dictators around the world?
Well, I think the message to people like the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran is exactly what Rubio said. We've given many, many warnings. The president just gave a warning within the last 48 hours about the Ayatollah's forces shooting and killing protesters in the streets. So they should very well be paying attention. The interesting thing about this operation, and Grant kind of touched on it, is the legal infrastructure that underpins this operation is what's made it so successful is not necessarily a purely military operation. This man and his wife were indicted by the United States. So we have that infrastructure and underpinning that makes this operation going to be much more successful as long as going forward the right things are done to keep it stabilized in the country itself. But it begs the question, how do we approach, and I'm sure somebody's working on this on the team, is how do we approach Colombia? How do we approach the cartel targets in Mexico? Because those governments are not in the same exact situation that the Maduro government was, where he's an illegitimate leader that stayed in office after a sham election. And what do we do about those going forward? Because we can't ignore those when we're acting on the priority in the new national security strategy of securing the Western Hemisphere from foreign influence again, which is what the president's doing.
Well, Colonel Newsham, on this point, we've seen U.S. military leadership on full display today, but perhaps there's only so much the United States can do when you look globally at all of the issues. But how about U.S. moral leadership and how that is perhaps on display today when it comes to freedom or inspiring not just military or not just political change, but the people in Venezuela, the people in Cuba, as Colonel Manus brought up, the people in Iran who are protesting. Is there a message for people around the world with today's mission?
Well, I think there is, and there's an alternative to what you had in a place like Venezuela, where it was really it was Latin America's oldest democracy, closely tied to the United States, a free economy. And over 25 years, it went from that into what it is today, which is an economic mess, a self-avowed enemy of the United States, just a complete problem, as Mr. Trump would use that kind of language. And the people who are the victims of that, they feel like there's no alternative. What are you going to do about it? Well, now and then somebody, in this case it's the United States, is able to do something about it. And that is a breath of sort of fresh air to say people who simply want nothing more than freedom and consensual government. Of course, inconsistency is a permanent part of foreign affairs, so it's not as if everywhere on the planet where something like this is going on is going to get a U.S. or other support, but it shows what can be done. And in this case, Venezuela's right in our backyard, and it was a target that a place that we could easily apply force to it. But this does send a message, and particularly when you look at the way that these aggressive dictatorships look at things, they rely on the free nations not being able to get their acts together to defend themselves. So anytime one of them or more of them push back and fight back, that it really causes them a lot of concern. So this is it's a nice thing to wake up this morning and see what happened here, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Colonel Newsham, you wrote the book When China Attacks. How exactly will the CCP be impacted by today's developments?
Well, they've pretty much been fighting a political warfare against us, a drug warfare, an economic warfare, propaganda warfare, where their inroads into Latin America in the last 20 years are astonishing. And they are ultimately surrounding us, taking away our friends and our allies. And the reason they've been able to do it so successfully is because there's been no resistance to it. Finally, an American administration is paying some attention to Latin America. And this is hopefully the start of something more consistent. But the Chinese have been very used to having really the playing field to themselves. Well, maybe they won't have it that way for much longer.
It's incredible to see. I don't believe there has been any official response or reaction from the Chinese regime yet, but I will check if there has been since we began our show. Colonel Manus, what's your take on the reaction and the knee-jerk reaction perhaps of some lawmakers or other people of influence here in the United States whose first response was to attack and criticize the Trump administration for carrying out this operation?
Well, they're the usual suspects, Paul. You know, you've got the leftists and the Democrat side, and you've got the anti-Trumpers that react negatively no matter what President Trump's administration does. But this operation is exactly what the people that voted for Donald J. Trump voted for, a use of American military and law enforcement forces in our own backyard to actually defend America's most vital interest against the hundreds of thousands of American deaths that things like these drugs that this cartel that Maduro was operating out of the country of Venezuela is responsible for. This is what they voted for. This is what they expect. They do not expect any type of long-term, endless conflict and those in occupation like what has happened in Afghanistan and Iraq and all of the other useless, endless wars that have cost a lot in billions and billions of dollars in treasure and thousands of American deaths, not to mention the deaths of individuals in those countries themselves. But they do expect this type of work. And that's what this is. And I think you're going to see the majority of folks that voted for Donald Trump come out strongly in support of this type of operation. And they're going to be watchful. They're going to be watchful going forward, because that question that we've both asked today is what's next has to be answered in the appropriate way. And I think this team has a plan. I look forward to seeing it unfold and seeing Venezuela and the Venezuelan people return back to a land of freedom. And I'd like to see the hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan refugees that are right here in this country be taken home. And we help take them home so that they can flood the streets in their country and live free again and help rebuild it.
Well, it's a very good point, and it's something the president raised during the press conference as well, not just helping the people in Venezuela, not just helping the people in Cuba, but the people who have had to flee these countries. We've seen images, we're going to bring them up soon, of Venezuelans celebrating in Florida, waving their flags and celebrating. It's just been incredible. We'll hopefully have a clip here to play of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Raisin Kane, sharing details of the operation, where he said over 150 aircrafts were involved, and the youngest in the crew was just 20 years old. Here he is.
At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49. We assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up, and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice.
Colonel Newsham, your reaction to what we just heard?
I'm surprised the youngest was only 20. Usually it's a little lower than that. But it's what I would expect, really, from the part of the U.S. military that does these sort of things. It was nice they used Delta Force. If I was in trouble, that's who I would like to come get me. And if I was sort of somebody they were coming after, they're the ones I would not want to come. They don't talk about themselves, which tells you a lot, but it does get across the thoroughgoing professionalism of the U.S. forces here. And even more impressive is that they could keep this secret. Nobody had any idea what was coming. So this was one that this will be one for the books. And I say the more that we learn about it, the more impressive it will be. And I look forward to the details of it. But this sort of thing, as we've discussed, now what's next?
Colonel Maness, on this point about keeping a secret, the president was asked during the press conference if they had briefed Congress on the upcoming and the pending attack. He said Congress has a tendency to leak. Talk to us about the difficulty of keeping, because this was a precise mission and a targeted mission, but it was extensive and it was comprehensive. Talk to us about the difficulty of keeping something like this secret enough to actually execute.
That's another small miracle, and will make this operation one for the books, Paul, because, they had a sliding window of opportunity to do this operation, and the president mentioned that they had delayed it 4 days because of weather and everything. Imagine that if we had pre-briefed congressional leaders like Hakeem Jeffries and said, hey, we're going to have to keep waiting for the weather and everything, that this definitely would have leaked and the operation would have likely failed had that happened. The big lesson learned here is don't pre-brief congressional leaders or anybody that doesn't have a need to know, because it puts the lives of our young men and women that are in combat in these situations at a much higher risk when those types of things leak like that. So I think it's fantastic that it didn't happen and that we pulled this operation off. And, the complexity of the suppression of enemy air defenses, maintaining air supremacy over an entire country for a long period of time, a couple of hours like that, while you've got somewhere between probably 200 and 300 men on the ground inside that country doing a rapid capture and extraction of Maduro and his wife and safely executing the exfiltration and getting everybody back to their launch locations safely and soundly with a minimum of injury, no losses amongst aircraft, is an incredible operation. And the men and women of the United States Armed Forces, and by the way, our intelligence services, which is my understanding, probably had some boots on the ground too that are not military intelligence services. So this was not just a joint operation, it was a joint interagency operation that was so successfully pulled off, and my hat's off to them.
A real masterclass. It seems to be an absolute masterclass. Colonel Newsham, Colonel Maness, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
And we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with analysis just in a couple minutes. And you're watching NTD News, where we're covering how the United States has captured Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro and his wife, and they're en route back to the United States, where they have been indicted. Joining us now to discuss is Gordon Chang, author of the book Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. He also wrote the book The Coming Collapse of China. We also have Robert Magnus, military analyst and a retired Army colonel, as well as Rick Fisher, international military analyst and senior fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center. Gentlemen, great to have you here on this quite remarkable morning and afternoon. Colonel, I would like to go to you first. It's just been incredible. The United States, they were able to turn the lights off in Caracas, capture Nicolás Maduro without a single U.S. life or piece of equipment lost. Really, what seems to be a masterclass in military execution.
Yeah, General, Kaine was very specific about some of the aspects of this operation. It's been in the making for some time. In fact, President Trump said earlier today that they put together a mock house, which is something fairly typical for special operators like Delta Force or SEALs and the like. And then it was executed with precision, as the general said. 150 aircraft, 20 bases, very low altitude. They were hidden in the clutter in the mountains. What that means is you couldn't see them electronically. And then they attacked, of course, at the compound where Maduro was hiding at 1:01 Eastern time. And then by 3:29, they were back on the Iwo Jima with, Maduro and his wife. So this was a very good operation tactically and strategically, arguably, on what the U.S. military was effective at doing today.
Gordon Chang, we saw a photo of Nicolás Maduro blindfolded, handcuffed on his way back to the United States. His last meeting was with Chinese officials in Venezuela. What message is this sending to America's adversaries around the world?
The adversaries have got to know that they're not safe. China right now has a lot invested in Venezuela. China extended something like $62 billion in loans. Now, most of that has been paid down with cheap oil, but the Chinese need Venezuelan oil, and they've been using Maduro's regime as a proxy to create trouble in the region. So China right now is suffering, especially because it looks like it might also lose another proxy this week, which is the Iranian regime. And 2025 was a bad year for Chinese proxies because they lost Syria, they lost a lot of influence in Riyadh and in the Gulf states. So China right now is in a position of retreat in many areas. And I don't know what the Chinese are going to do to try to reverse that, but this could get very interesting in 2026 because they're not going to take this lying down.
Rick Fisher, President Trump brought up the Monroe Doctrine, which is basically American dominance of the Western Hemisphere. But this event and development is likely to reverberate not just in the Western Hemisphere, but around the world. What do you think the major geopolitical implications will be?
This event, this freeing of Venezuela from the Maduro dictatorship is going to resound much, much louder than even the 1983 Ronald Reagan administration liberation of Grenada. Grenada was a small operation. Still, it was going to be a base for Soviet bombers aimed at the United States. But Venezuela is a regime, an ally of the axis of evil, and taking out this ally of the axis of evil, this proxy for the Chinese communist goal of hegemony over the earth, is amazing. And yes, it will reverberate, but it is the beginning of a long conflict. But Donald Trump is joining this conflict. Last week, we saw the most furious Chinese military exercise around Taiwan. Trump's operation definitely trumps that. But the Chinese are going to strike back after the United States bombed the Iranian nuclear facilities. The Chinese engineered a Pakistani nuclear alliance with Saudi Arabia. And this is the kind of back and forth that we're going to be seeing in 2026 and beyond.
Colonel, the president contrasted this operation with America's withdrawal from Afghanistan. Of course, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has a very different take on the military and military philosophy. Are we seeing the impact of that, and is that having an effect on the military already here?
Well, obviously, the debacle of our August 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan was an embarrassment for the U.S. military, but even broader for the United States across the world. They saw weakness, and I think that invited Putin to invade Ukraine the following year. So we need to understand that this is a new day. The U.S. military has proven itself in this operation with spades. And I think that, as Gordon has indicated, they're awake over in Beijing to the demonstration and willingness by the Trump administration to use force against ostensibly very good allies for the Communist Party in Beijing. The Venezuelans, now perhaps no more. Certainly the Cubans are awake, the Colombians next door, and other organizations, to include the Iranians in Tehran, who are facing their own internal uprising at the current time. So the U.S. military is proving itself, and I think Mr. Trump, although he's advertising himself as the peace president, he certainly has been willing of late to use the armed forces in a very decisive way.
Well, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he said during the press conference that he called President Trump the president of peace. He said he offered Maduro many off-ramps, many, as Rubio put it, generous offers to go live somewhere else. But in Rubio's words, he said Maduro wanted to play big boy. I want to play a clip for all of you. We talked to some people at a local restaurant in Doral, Florida. People there are celebrating the capture of Maduro at one Venezuelan restaurant. Doral, of course, home to one of the largest Venezuelan communities in Florida. Let's take a listen.
What does this moment mean for you?
It means so much happiness. No one wants Maduro in Venezuela. Everyone's super happy. I've been calling all the people that I know that's in Venezuela right now. They're all super happy. My grandma has been crying of happiness.
Well, I'm living here 24 years. I'm waiting for this moment, and it's amazing.
Do you have friends and family?
Yes.
There?
Many.
Do they know about it?
Yes.
What is their reaction?
They are, trying not to be happy, waiting for the prisoners that still are in prison. So.
What kind of prisoners?
Politics prisoners.
I knew Venezuela before, during, and now. This is terrible, and this is the best news, and we are so happy.
How much pain did Maduro bring to the Venezuelan people?
He brought so much pain to us, like so much frustration. Like when we were doing the elections, everyone voted for Maria Corina, and he said it was 58% him. No, he didn't. No one wanted Maduro there. Maduro has caused pain to all of the Venezuelans there. The only people that like Maduro is the people that are getting money from him and are stealing money from the people in Venezuela.
What message does it send to the people in those countries, Nicaragua, Cuba, Colombia, where communism and socialism is running deep?
Socialism is not good. That our governments are not good. We need freedom.
Do you think this moment brings hope to other countries that are under dictatorship?
Of course, many hopes to Cuba, to Nicaragua, to all the countries, especially in South America, well, all America, Latin America.
Venezuela is free now. Soon is coming Cuba, Nicaragua, and I hope that Brazil and Colombia too.
What is your message to the Trump administration?
Well, first is thank you.
Trump, thank you so much for doing this for us and doing this for Venezuela, because we've been waiting for this 25 years of us waiting patiently for Maduro to leave.
Gordon Chang, your reaction?
Well, this is July 4th for Venezuela, and Trump is the liberator. So this is going to be important because it's not only the countries in the region, but it's also Iran, where we're seeing the people of Iran on the streets in about 70 cities taking very brave actions against the regime that is killing people on the streets as we speak. So I think we're going to see a wave of freedom. And the other thing, which is the geopolitical element, is that, remember, Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserves, about 300 billion barrels. We're going to see the U.S. companies go in there They're going to reform and upgrade that infrastructure. And we're going to see a lot of abundant energy, especially to America's friends. So this is going to be really important for free societies everywhere.
Colonel, is this the case? This is not just American leadership that we're showing on display, but also moral leadership, the promotion and the support of freedom around the world?
Oh, no doubt it's moral leadership. And it, of course, in contrast to how the Chinese or the Russians would do it, is quite stark. My only concern here is that, I was very much involved in the American invasion in 2003 into Iraq, and then we assumed guardianship, essentially, oversight of that government. We made some very key mistakes in that effort. I just hope that, we'll be more respectful of the Venezuelan people as we proceed in this oversight mission. Use as many of them as we can, but as the president said today, we don't want corruption to return, so we have to be very careful. So this is a delicate balance. Probably the largest piece of the news that came out of this invasion was, we're going to run Venezuela for the near term.
Rick, what was your reaction when you heard the president say that?
We need to do this transition right, and we need to do it rapidly. The Colonel is absolutely right that the world will be watching how we manage this transition, and it will stand as a further encouragement to other oppressed peoples that they too can realize freedom with the help of the United States and its allies. I'm also concerned that we also exploit the opportunity that we have. China, Russia, and others have established a beachhead in the Western Hemisphere in Venezuela, and we need to expose this beachhead. We need to take it down. We need to be letting all the files be made public to the extent possible to prove the hegemonic designs of the Chinese Communist Party and their axis of evil allies.
Gordon, if we get a look at these files and this comes to light, what do you expect we'll find? How close was the relationship between Maduro and the Chinese Communist Party and perhaps Russia and Iran?
First of all, we're going to see Chinese military involvement in Venezuela's military. As Rick Fisher can tell us, China has all of these listening posts in Venezuela and has spread its tentacles throughout the regime. Also, what would be really interesting is to see China's involvement in Maduro's narco trafficking. If we can establish that, then that is an enormous propaganda benefit for us. President Trump doesn't believe in information warfare, but it is absolutely critical, as the Chinese have been able to demonstrate time and time again. And this is an opportunity for the U.S. to win the information war by what Rick said, just exposing those documents that we find in Maduro's files.
It's just been incredible. It's just been an incredible morning. Colonel, listening to as Colonel Raisin Kane said, the level of integration and cooperation between the various branches of the military and also intelligence, CIA, NSA. Talk to us a little bit about the kind of planning and the cooperation and teamwork needed to execute such a clinical mission.
Yeah. You notice that Pete Hegseth and John Ratcliffe were standing behind the president. So clearly, CIA was very much.
Looks like we've had a technical issue there. Gordon, I'm going to go to you. What are you going to be watching most closely? We've talked about what's next, the importance of getting this right. What are you going to be most focused on?
Turn of Maria Corina Machado. She won the election last year by all accounts. And, in terms of the U.S. running Venezuela, we don't really have to do that much. All we have to do is to return her to her rightful place, which is the presidency of the country. I think if we do that quickly, then the concerns that we've expressed in this segment are probably going to go away. Because what we will see, for instance, is the U.S. companies coming in with the oil infrastructure. That will create a lot of revenue for Machado, and that will give her really a tailwind, and that will give her the ability to actually get things moving very quickly. So I'm looking.
Okay, we've had some technical issues. We thank Gordon Chang, Rick Fisher, and Colonel Robert Maginnis. Now, we're going to go and take a look at some reactions from the Venezuelan people after today's developments.
What does this moment mean for you?
It means so much happiness. No one wants Maduro in Venezuela. Everyone's super happy. I've been calling all the people that I know that's in Venezuela right now. They're all super happy. My grandma has been crying of happiness.
Well, I'm living here 24 years. I'm waiting for this moment, and it's amazing.
Do you have friends and family?
Yes.
There?
Many.
Do they know about it?
Yes.
What is their reaction?
They are, trying not to be happy, waiting for the prisoners that still are in prison. So.
What kind of prisoners?
Politics prisoners.
I knew Venezuela before, during, and now. This is terrible, and this is the best news, and we are so happy.
How much pain did Maduro bring to the Venezuelan people?
He brought so much pain to us, like so much frustration. Like when we were doing the elections, everyone voted for Maria Corina, and he said it was 58% him. No, he didn't. No one wanted Maduro there. Maduro has caused pain to all of the Venezuelans there. The only people that like Maduro is the people that are getting money from him and are stealing money from the people in Venezuela.
What message does it send to the people in those countries, Nicaragua, Cuba, Colombia, where communism and socialism is running deep?
Socialism is not good. That our governments are not good. We need freedom.
Do you think this moment brings hope to other countries that are under dictatorship?
Of course, many hopes to Cuba, to Nicaragua, to all the countries, especially in South America, well, all America, Latin America.
Venezuela is free now. Soon is coming Cuba, Nicaragua, and I hope that Brazil and Colombia too.
What is your message to the Trump administration?
Well, first is thank you.
Trump, thank you so much for doing this for us and doing this for Venezuela, because we've been waiting for this 25 years of us waiting patiently for Maduro to leave.
We just heard from NTD Steve Lance in Florida, speaking with what appeared to be Venezuelans living here in America, celebrating the capture of Nicolás Maduro and highlighting the pain and suffering that he's brought to the people of Venezuela. Now, we've been here this morning since we heard the news that the United States captured Maduro and his wife, the president giving a press conference just shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern time this morning. And the president saying that the mission to capture Maduro in Caracas, Venezuela, said it was the most spectacular assault since World War II. The president said as he was watching it, he's in Mar-a-Lago at the moment, but was able to watch it in real time, said that it was like watching a movie. The president said he compared it to the success to attacks on Soleimani, al-Baghdadi terrorist, and he said that the only nation in the world who will be able to carry out an attack like this is the United States. We heard from our own NTD's Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, that from the president's briefing that Maduro was likely in a military fort in Caracas. But regardless, President Trump said that the U.S. military was able to turn the lights off around the city and was then able to execute the attack. The president not going into any details on how they did it, but saying that they were able to, using their, I believe he said, capabilities, were able to turn the lights off. The president then contrasting the success of it to the Afghanistan withdrawal. He said that the Venezuelan military seemed to be in position. One U.S. aircraft did take fire, but was able to get home safely. The plane was still able to fly. Not a single U.S. life or piece of equipment was lost during the mission, which was just incredible. And joining us now, we have John Suarez, human rights advocate and executive director for a Center for a Free Cuba. We also have our own Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD's Washington correspondent. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. We've just got a couple minutes, I'm hearing in my ear. John Suarez, your reaction to what we saw this morning.
I think it's wonderful news that Nicolás Maduro, a cruel dictator, is out of power. I'm still concerned there are 30,000 Cubans still in Venezuela today, and they are a de facto colonial force running the country, and they need to leave.
Luis, you've been following this story for a while now. What is the very latest you're hearing about what's going on?
Well, we've heard from the president that Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, is now being sworn in and is in conversations with the Trump administration. Presumably, an orderly transition will occur in the coming days. I think it's also very important to note how horrible the Maduro regime has been for Venezuela. Over a third of the country, like nearly 9 million people, had fled Venezuela since Maduro took power. There's 700,000 of them here in the U.S. I personally have felt the impact of today's military operation, absolute resolve to restore democracy in the region. And I don't think I've ever felt in a heavier way the phrase, God bless America. And I know that Venezuelans in Colombia, in Miami, in Chile, in Madrid, and all over the world as they've emigrated will feel it as well.
John, there are still socialist regimes in Nicaragua, in Cuba. You think that they will gain, the people there will be inspired by what they're seeing this morning?
Definitely they'll be inspired. I think that with this transition government, hopefully a provisional government for a transition with Edmundo Gonzalez, who was elected by the vast majority of Venezuelans in July of 2024 and should be sitting in the presidency of Venezuela today, that the peoples of Nicaragua, Cuba, are definitely inspired by seeing a democratic change in Venezuela, knowing that Venezuela in the past had been a great defender of democracy in the region when it was itself a democracy. And with its restoration, we expect that that will also boost democratic prospects for the region.
A lot to look forward to. John Suarez, Luis Eduardo Martinez, thank you both.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to our special coverage of this developing story. Be sure to watch tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern for NTD Evening News. We'll continue to bring you the latest updates on the situation in Venezuela. I'm Paul Greeny. Thank you for watching.